Okay, we're on lesson 6-8, which is percent of change. Make sure you're on the page that says reading to learn mathematics. We're actually going to fill in some definitions on the bottom chart, and then we're going to do some examples on the second page. So come down to here. What is a percent of change? First of all, a percent of change, that's going to be P, is the amount of change on the top divided by whatever the original amount was. I'm going to abbreviate amount AMT. So to get that amount of change, we simply take the new amount minus the original amount, subtract that on the top, and you take that difference and divide it by the original amount. There are two different kinds of percents of change. There's a percent of increase and a percent of decrease. So a percent of increase is a positive percent. A decrease is a negative percent. So sometimes you accidentally subtract these in the wrong order. This also helps you. Even if you accidentally get the wrong sign, you can always just change it. If you know it's going up, you know your percent better be positive, and you know if it's going down, it should be negative. So let's say that I had the numbers 1.35 to 4.9. The original is listed first. The new amount is listed second. So to get the right sign every time, you would always do the new minus the original to get that difference, and then you would divide it by the original amount, which is the first number. Now, when you type this in a calculator, if you have a graphing calculator or a scientific calculator, you're going to want to, if you want to type the whole thing, you're going to want to put those parentheses around the 1.35 and the 4.9, and then you're going to divide the 1.35. All right, so notice that I get a decimal. All right. So the decimal is 2.63, but I want a percent, and to turn it into a percent, we actually have to move it 2 to the right, and we would get 263%. So from the original to the new, it went up 263%. Now, if I accidentally put these numbers backwards, it would have given me a negative, but if I saw that it was an increase, I could have just erased that negative or ignored it and just put the percent, because I would still get the same percent. I would have just had a different sign if these two were reversed, the 4.9 and the 1.35. All right, so now I got 21 as my original, and I'm going up to 11.5. The new is 11.5 minus the original of 21 divided by an original of 21. So you always have to pay attention to those numbers because it's easy to mix them up. Now, if you don't want to have to move the decimal 2 places, you could tack on a times 100, because moving the decimal and timesing by 100 do the same thing. All right, you'll get the same thing that way. So again, if I have a calculator that will do order of operations, if I want to subtract it first, and I want it to actually subtract and not start dividing and multiplying with order of operations, I have to have the parentheses around it. If I don't have a calculator that does this, divided by 21 times 100, then what has to happen is, I got a negative 45.2, let's make it 24. And that's percent. Negative means it went down, so I double check to make sure it went down over here, and yes, it did decrease, so it is a percent of decrease. If you have a regular calculator, you might want to do the subtraction first, get your negative 9.5, then you're going to have negative 9.5 divided by the 21, hit equal, and then either move your decimal 2 to the right or times it by 100 to get your percent. Okay, you can do either one. So it doesn't matter if you don't have a scientific or graphing calculator, you just have to do each step separate than typing the whole thing in at once. Okay? All right, flip that over. So this is just the vocabulary. Flip it over, so now you're on the study guide page. All right, so up in here, we're going to put the little formula, I guess. That's new minus original divided by original, and then you either move the decimal 2 to the right, or go ahead and just type in times 100, and that will move it for you. Because when you do this fraction, right, when you divide a number in another number, you're going to get a decimal. So when you divide your fraction, you're going to get a decimal. If you want to turn it, we already did this lesson, if you turn it into a percent, you move it 2 to the right, or you take 0.28 and times it by 100, and that will give you the 28% also. Whatever you choose is fine. So to do these types of problems, because your homework will look like this as well, you're going to have to state whether it's an increase or decrease, and I'm okay with you typing or writing an I or a D for increase or decrease. So we go to the problem and we say it's going from 22 to 16, that's a decrease. All right, so that's the first step. Then we have to fill in our numbers according to this to find the percent of increase or decrease. Well, I know it's going down, so it's going to be a negative. Hopefully I do this in the right order. If I don't and I get a positive answer, I'm just going to put a negative in front of it. So the new number is 16. That's always the second number. The original is always first, right? Original, new, minus the original number, divided by the original 22. You can either choose to times by 100, or when you get the decimal, remember to move it 2 to the right. Sometimes people forget to do that step. All right, so in my calculator, I'm going to type in 16 minus 22. If you need to hit equal, you hit equal. Then you're going to divide that answer by 22, hit equal. You're either going to move your decimal 2 to the right, because it comes out to negative 0.273 something, or times it by 100, and I believe it says to round to the nearest tenth, right? So that means one place. And I did get a negative here, and it does decrease, so it makes sense to have a negative. To go from 8 years to 10 years is an increase, right? I for increase. We take, to find the percent of change, how much it changed by, the new number is 10 minus the original, which is 8, divided by 8. And I'm going to times it by 100. Now, if you see a subtraction like this, and you can do it in your head, most likely, a lot of them are going to be similar to this, but some of them are going to be a little bigger numbers. It would probably be easier for you just to say in your head, oh, that's 2. 2 divided by 8 times 100, done. And you don't have to type this whole thing in. So 2 divided by 8, that's 2.25 times 100 comes out to 25%. And it did come out to a positive 25. Make sure that was supposed to be positive. It was an increase, so it should be positive. So I've got from 815 to 925 is also an increase. The new one was 925 minus the original one, which was 815. We're going to divide by 815, either move the decimal 2 to the right or times it by 100. And I'm going to get 13.5, and it was positive. It's an increase, so it should be positive. Okay, let's do one more decrease. 15 to 12, so I got 12 minus 15. New minus original, divide by the original, and then times it by 100. Okay, so I've got 12 minus 15 is negative 3 divided by 15 times 100. Comes out to negative 20. Did it go down? Yes, so it should be negative. Okay, so we'll practice a few more in class, and the homework is going to look just like this. This would be how you would show your work. You'll indicate if it's an increase or a decrease, and then your answers, you make sure that the decreases are negative and the increases are positive.